Come, children, come close to the fire. It's getting cold. Tonight I will tell you a story our people have whispered for generations. A story the sea itself remembers. It is not for the faint of heart, for the waters along the Konkan coast keep more than fish and salt. They keep promises and debts. Listen well, for what I tell you is true, and it may save you should you ever hear your name carried on the waves. This is the tale of Gopi, the fisherman, and the Girha. The sea had turned cold and unforgiving that year. Each year Gopi hauled in his nets only to find a few scattered crabs clinging weakly. Or worse, a tangle of wet ropes and empty baskets. The sharp, salty sting of failure pressed on him. The markets had stopped calling his name. His wife had started suing for neighbors just to keep rice in the house. Gopi felt the weight of failure growing heavy with every tide. One evening, while sitting alone on the shore, Gopi saw his friend Ramu walk past with a basket full of fresh crabs. It was nearly dark, and Gopi's eyes lit up. "Where did you catch those?" he asked. Ramu pointed behind him, toward the thick mangrove belt in the distance, behind the bend of Black Creek. Gopi looked surprised. He asked, "Wasn't the place cursed?" Ramu smirked and walked away. They also say not to whistle at night or to touch tamarind trees during an eclipse. It was up to Gopi whether he wanted crabs or ghost stories. That night, after everyone had gone to sleep, Gopi quietly pushed his boat into the water. He had not told his wife. He had not lit the lantern either. The tide was low, but the sea moved with a restless pull. The salty air hung heavy, and small waves lapped softly against the wooden sides of his boat. Only the moon followed him, silver and silent, its reflection breaking and mending over the ripples. The boat floated quietly near the edge of the mangroves, where the sea met the tangled roots and the water shifted between fresh and salt. The sea was strangely calm, almost too still for comfort. The oars dipped into the water without a sound. Gopi reached the spot Ramu had mentioned and dropped the anchor. He tossed the net and waited. The only sound was the soft splash of water and the occasional creak of the boat. Then he heard it. A voice, like a sigh carried on the cold breeze. It was soft, but sharp enough to freeze his blood and still his heart for a moment. He straightened, scanning the dark. His head turned slowly from left to right, following the drifting voice. In a low tone and uncertainty, he asked, "Who's there?" almost afraid the sea itself might answer. There was no reply. He sat down again, but the air around him felt heavy and suffocating, like the sea at midday when the tides hang still and thick. The water darkened suddenly, as if something deep below was stirring. He shook his head, telling himself that he was just tired. Then it came again. Gopi, Gopi, Gopi. This time the sound was unmistakably close. It sounded like a woman. Not just any woman. It sounded like his wife. He stood again, peering into the water. Rukmini? Rukmini? There was nothing, just the soft rippling of water. He leaned forward. The moonlit water shimmered, but its surface showed shadows that did not belong. Curious, he inched closer to the edge, lowering himself until his knee touched the wood. He dipped his finger in, stirring the water in slow arcs. Nothing below, just darkness, endless cold. But he froze when he heard a soft drip of water behind him. Slow, deliberate. It was the sound of someone climbing out of the water, someone standing right behind him. Before he could turn, a force shoved him hard. His foot hit against the wet ledge of the boat and he fell head first into the sea. The water swallowed him whole. He struggled to rise, but something was pulling him down from beneath the surface. The current was too strong. It was not the kind of pull that came from nature. It felt deliberate, like hands grabbing his leg, holding him down, keeping him from even breaking the surface again. He kicked wildly. His hands scraped against something below. It was not sand or stone. It was rough, cold, metal. His eyes caught a flicker of something swaying in the water. It was hair, long, black, and moving like it had life of its own. Before he could react, the hair wrapped around his leg and pulled. That was the last thing he remembered. When Gopi opened his eyes again, the sun was high above. He was lying on the floor of his boat, soaked, aching, and confused. His nets were tangled. Still wrapped around his ankle was a thick lock of black hair, tight as a vine, refusing to let go. He sat up and untangled it carefully, knowing that gentleness was the only way. The hair was wet. It smelled like salt and rot. Without thinking much of it, he folded the hair and stuffed it into an empty tobacco tin from his toolbox. He pushed it into the corner and began to row back home. When he returned, his wife scolded him for leaving without telling anyone. He barely listened. That night, as they lay on the mattress, She turned to him quietly and asked, "Why is the bed wet?" Gopi said nothing. The silence between them grew heavy, thick, like the damp air in their small home. Next morning he met Shamu Kaka, one of the oldest fishermen in the village. People say he had once seen something in the water that made him lose his mind. When Gopi mentioned the black creek, the voice, and the hair, Shamu Kaka went quiet. He looked Gopi straight in the eyes and said, "You found a Girha." Gopi frowned, leaning in as Shamu's voice grew low and heavy, like a secret being passed through generations. "A Girha is no ordinary spirit. It is the restless soul of one who drowned, forever bound to the water's edge. They dwell near creeks and lakes, where the mist hangs thick and the night hides many secrets. They call out to travelers with voices soft and sweet, voices that sound like someone you know, someone you love. But if you follow their call, the water pulls you under, deeper and deeper, until there's no return. Some say if a man is strong and lucky, he might snatch a lock of Girha's hair. With that hair, the spirit is trapped, bound to serve. But beware, such power comes with a curse, and the price is never small." Gopi laughed, asking Shamu Kaka if he caught a ghost. Shamu, on the other hand, did not smile. "You did not catch it. You angered it. The hair is not yours to keep, and you must never, I say never, speak to it." That night Gopi opened the tin. The hair was still wet. Just for fun, he whispered, "Give me 100 crabs tomorrow. A good catch." The next morning his nets were full. From that day on, Gopi's luck changed. He caught more than he ever had: crabs, fish, and once even a strange golden-skinned creature the market had never seen before. His fame grew. People came to him for advice. His debts vanished. His wife wasn't entirely happy with his progress, but it had been many days since she had enjoyed any luxuries or tasted good, heartwarming, savory food for 3 continuous days. Gopi bought a second boat, and through it all, the hair remained locked in the tin, tucked away in his toolbox. But simultaneously, strange things were happening. The mattress was always damp. The floor under the bed grew patches of moss. His wife said she heard footsteps at night. His sons began to wake up crying. "There's someone in the bathroom bucket. He calls my name." At first, Gopi ignored it. Then the voice began to reach him too. It whispered from the water pot, echoed from the well, and even in the soft droplets sliding down from the walls during the rain. The voice was no longer faint. It was clear. After all, with great power comes great chaos. And Gopi carried this secret like a heavy burden. He could not bring himself to share it with his wife. One day, the Girha said, "One more drink, one more drink. For me, and for you, and for you." Gopi had never been a heavy drinker, but now he found himself needing it. The bottle became his friend. The voice became louder. The hair inside the tin never dried. Some nights it moved, twitched against the box walls like a caged animal. His worried wife threatened to leave him if he did not share the secret behind his sudden wealth. At last Gopi gave in and showed her the small tin box. The moment she opened it, her hands flew to her nose. Choking on the rotting smell inside, she gagged. That night erupted into one of the feistiest fights they had ever known. She begged him to throw the lock of hair away, but he refused. He was no longer just lucky. He was powerful. He could ask for anything. He now began demanding more. Bigger catches, more wealth, rare stones from under the sea. And the Girha always gave. Sometimes it whispered in the dark, "You fell once, Gopi. Fall again, and you stay." His wife stopped speaking to him, and in her silence, Gopi befriended the bottle. He began to voyage out at night, alone and drunk. One stormy night, rain lashed down like icy needles, stinging Gopi's face as he fought the thrashing waves. He rode to the Black Creek, his hands trembling violently as he opened the tin box. It was empty. Or did it seem? The hair that once promised power was gone. A crushing wave of desperation surged through him, colder and sharper than the storm itself. He shouted into the roaring wind, asking the Girha to bring him gold from the wrecked ships beneath these waves. Lightning cracked across the sky. Then he saw something. Something standing at the back of his boat. A figure, hair dripping, face pale, eyes like milky glass. The Girha smiled eerily. "You dropped the key, Gopi." It lunged toward Gopi, its rotten index finger touching his shoulder, gentle, like sliding a coin across a table. There was no pressure, no shove, only a strange, shifting weight that unsettled him. Before he could steady himself, Gopi's body gave away, and he tumbled silently into the cold water below. When they found him the next morning, he was lying on the jagged rocks near the shore, coughing harshly, eyes glazed with confusion. The storm had battered him badly. But that was only the beginning of his troubles. At home, the worst news awaited him. His two sons had disappeared during the storm. They refused to listen to their mother, just like their father, and they went searching for Gopi. Days later, their bodies were found tangled among the roots of the mangroves, where the water was still and dark. Some villagers whispered that they heard Gopi's voice calling to them from the sea. Others claim it was a different voice, something colder and stranger, that whispered to the children, luring them away. The blame fell swiftly and heavily on Gopi. Soon the local authorities arrested him, accusing him of hiding treasure that should have been handed over to the government. His wife left him, carrying nothing but sorrow and silence. The money he had earned was seized, and the boats he once proudly owned were dragged away by men who refused to even meet his eyes. Today, Gopi is old. He sits alone in a small jail cell. The guards often say that he spends his day talking to the water bucket in the corner, mumbling to himself. He claims the sea still speaks to him, that its voice never left. And though the tin box is gone, and no one calls his name anymore, his bed is always wet. And so, my dear children, this is why the old ones say, never answer a voice from the water at night, no matter how sweet it sounds, no matter whose lips it seems to borrow. Now go on, go to sleep.